Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a look at a mid-range laptop called the Teclast Tbolt 20 Pro. The Tbolt is one of their newer sub-brands that focuses on models that have slightly higher performance than the typical budget models that they produce. In particular, has a Intel Core i5-8259U processor clocked up to 3.8 GHz, a quad-core chip, uses Iris Plus graphics, and also has a 15.6-inch Full HD IPS display that has relatively slim and minimal bezels. And it has 256 gigs of built-in SSD that can be further expanded, along with 8 gigs of built-in RAM out of the box, for a sub $500 laptop that this will be going for. Weighs 1.8 kilograms, has quad speakers, and has a 55 watt-hour battery. We're looking at dual-band 2.4 and 5G AC Wi-Fi, along with Bluetooth version 5.1. Otherwise, this i5 chip is part of the 8th gen architecture, so it's not quite the newest anymore. However, it still is going to be decent, definitely will be faster performing than some of the entry-level laptops we've been seeing recently that have used Celeron chipsets. Standard accessories including a quick user guide and warranty, as well as the power adapter. Now, they actually give you a round barrel plug connection out of the box, but again, this laptop can be also charged using a standard power delivery USB Type-C port. Taking a closer look at the design of the laptop, the front lid is made entirely out of aluminum and metal, so it feels pretty cold and reassuring to the touch. However, the base of the laptop, such as the bottom portion here and the deck as well as palm rest, are made out of plastic. On the right hand side, you have access to a micro SD card reader along with a 3.5mm headphone jack, 2 USB Type-A ports along with a Kingston lock. And then flipping things over, we also get an additional third full-size USB Type-A 3.0 port, a full-sized HDMI port, AC adapter, or you can use this Type-C port also for charging, and this power delivery port also supports video output, so you can connect it to another external monitor if you want to, and then the second Type-C port, though, is only for data. Now, next to this, we also get an interesting little switch that if you press on, it actually will deactivate the webcam. Otherwise, again, here's what the laptop looks like. There are a few ventilation grills located on the other side just to dissipate the heat, and here's what the hinge is like. The hinge, by the way, is also made out of metal, reminds me a little bit of some of the ThinkPads that we've seen previously. Here's what the laptop looks like on the back. So one thing to note here is there isn't really a quick release slot or door for accessing the RAM or SSD. So in order to go and upgrade those components, you have to actually take out all the screws on the sides. So that might be a little bit of a missed opportunity since this laptop does support a second slot. Now, we'll also notice 2 of the 4 speakers. The other 2 are actually located on the inside of the laptop, some soft touch rubber feet, and also additional ventilation grills. And most notably, there is this pretty tall ridge created by this rubber bumper. And so when you set it down, it actually creates some additional elevation and provides some natural airflow. It is pretty stable and firm as long as you have it on a relatively flat surface. When it comes to opening up the lid, it does require 2 hands, so you have to kind of press on the palm rest here to open it up. The hinge is pretty stiff and holds the weight of the monitor really without too many issues, doesn't quite wobble either, even if you're kind of moving the laptop, and it can be folded all the way down 180 degrees. So just like the aforementioned ThinkPads, if you accidentally snap it too far back, or if a kid is pushing it, it's not going to break as easily, even though this is not a touchscreen on this particular model. Even if you're pressing down and kind of putting your hands on top of it, overall it feels actually pretty stable and firm. The touchpad here is super large in terms of size. In fact, if I put it next to a smartphone that has kind of a 6-inch display just here for reference, you can see that in fact the surface area, it might be even a little bit wider. So this is a huge trackpad area, pretty easy to navigate because of this large surface, and there's left and right click keys, which overall feel responsive enough. Also includes a dedicated numpad on the side, although these keys are a little bit more cramped than the actual keyboard. Pretty comfortable after using it for a bit, and then we also have 2 additional speakers located on the top portion here next to the hinge. I do also like that the power key is located on the very side and it's not clustered together with the actual keyboard, making it a little bit harder to accidentally press on. Otherwise, on the very top of the display, we also see the webcam, so we do have a pretty conventional placement here that is working well, and there's also stereo microphones. Now, the only function that is maybe missing from the design would be a fingerprint scanner. I do think that might be something a little bit convenient just for authentication and more quickly logging in, but at the moment, this one you have to just use your password. Windows 10 Pro Edition that comes pre-installed, and you won't really find any extras or any bloatware aside from just the standards that come with Windows. And in terms of the system specifications, again, if we just quickly look at this, out of the 256 gigs of built-in SSD, you have roughly 200 gigs free. Wireless AC card here that is from Intel, the AC9461, although again, doesn't support Wi-Fi 6 protocols at the moment. Otherwise, the screen here actually looks pretty decent, I have to say, in terms of it is an IPS panel, which means that you won't really find any issues in terms of viewing angles, even if we're tilting the screen at different personally didn't find any issues in real-world usage. Even if I was trying to use this outdoors with a bit of sunlight, still looked good enough. And then here is also the minimum brightness setting, which you can get fairly dim even if you're using this at night in bed. Briefly returning to the keyboard, to turn on the backlight, we tap on Function and F9. All the keycaps also shine through, so pretty easy to find your way around. Backlighting, I didn't really have an issue here. The light here will also time out after a few seconds of inactivity to save on power, as you can see there. So again, here is the two modes in terms of brightness. If we tap on it again, it will turn it off. Minimum setting, and then here's the brightest setting. And you can hear that under these lighter tasks, usually it's also pretty quiet, but this i5 chipset does have an active fan that can kick in to prevent overheating. I'm going to take a look at how well it works with loading up pages. Let's try The Verge. It's kind of a benchmark as a fairly complex site, and you can see how it's almost instantly loaded once we click on it. So definitely is very fast performance compared to especially the other budget laptops and mini PCs that we just came out from. Try out different gestures like pulling in, pulling out, and everything felt pretty responsive. Wi-Fi was also pretty strong in terms of connectivity. I was always around 4 if not full bars using 5 gigahertz bands, so didn't really have an issue when it comes to staying connected, and everything is still, as you can see here, loading up super quickly regardless of what you're looking at. I can tap on a page, pretty much instantly will load. Let's jump into playing back a YouTube video here and see how it fares. Some of the takeaways here being that the speaker quality is definitely above average. In fact, if you have it on a flat surface with those dual speakers pointing downwards combined with the two on the inside, it gets louder than average, and there's actually a hint of bass. The processor here is definitely powerful enough, along with the Intel Iris graphics, to handle 4K videos, and I can scrub between parts of the video. Everything is remaining quite smooth and fluid, still with 0 dropped frames. And for lighter tasks like watching back videos, doing some email and document editing, I'm averaging around 7 hours of battery life, the screen at around 50% brightness. But if you're doing things that are super heavy, like I said, playing back a lot of games, editing videos, things like that, then the battery will also be quicker to drain, closer to around 3 hours or so. And by the way, here's what the laptop sounds like under heavier loads. Although these synthetic scores aren't everything, the i5-8259U manages to score on average pass mark score of around 8,122, which is actually not bad. Definitely it's a huge step up compared to the aforementioned Celeron chips, such as the N3350 that we see commonly on laptops, which are around $200 to $300, typically has a score of around 1,100. In fact, compared to another mini PC that we saw that was using the Ryzen 7 3750 from B-Link, had a CPU passmark score of 8,345, and that one was clocked up to 4 gigahertz and used Radeon Vega mobile graphics. And so by contrast, you can see that this Core i5 chip is not shabby at all. In fact, it's almost par on par, a little bit less. Other models which are powered by Intel Core i7, you'll find even stronger performance still, but at where it sits, this is definitely not bad. As touched on, even budget laptops these days can do a fair job when it comes to office and document editing, regardless of if it's a more complex spreadsheet, a PowerPoint with more slides, or even a longer Word document or essay. It all flows very well and can be opened quickly on this laptop. So here's just a quick test of that. We can kind of navigate around the cells. Everything is feeling pretty responsive. Jump between multiple multiple documents. Other things like doing a bit of coding, including Jupyter Notebooks, Visual Studio, things that are a little bit more taxing can still work just fine, since the specs on here, in fact, are equivalent to many work and corporate laptops. A lot of companies I know do have ThinkPads or Dells, which are configured for their employees, which have very similar horsepower to this model, often coming with a i5 chip, creative apps such as Photoshop, or even trying out some video editing, and both of those applications, surprisingly, are also pretty good on a laptop like this. So especially with Photoshop, touching up images is no issues at all, a breeze in fact on this model. And when it comes to video editing, it may not be, again, the fastest in the world, but definitely will get the job done. Exporting a full HD clip around 10 minutes long, it took me just around 4 minutes for the video to finish processing and save, which is pretty good. Now, of course, if you're trying to then edit a 4K clip, it does become more taxing on the iris graphics. We'll be looking at roughly the processing time equal to the duration of the video that you're making. Speaking of gaming, this laptop is fine when it comes to doing more moderate and lighter or older titles, things like Minecraft run flawlessly on here. However, when you start getting into the territory of new AAA titles and games in general like Flight Simulator or Cyberpunk, definitely this is still going to be a little bit of a stretch because it's still not quite a gaming laptop at the end of the day. You want to have, ideally, a more powerful GPU. You can definitely get by, especially on some of the classics, on this laptop. So here's Csgo, for example, and running at moderate settings, you're looking at around 60, if not 70 frames per second. And then Rainbow Six Siege from Tom Clancy will get us around 40 frames per second on average. Quality of the webcam is also not too shabby. This is going to be sufficient for things like Skype, for Teams, just for video chatting and meetings in general, and the microphone quality is slightly above average. And turning it off just by tapping on that aforementioned switch on the side is actually pretty effective. And after you do that, it will say, "We can't find your camera, the hardware has been disconnected." So there we have it. That's been our video review of the Teclast Tbolt 20 Pro. Things like web browsing, even if you have 10 or 15 tabs open, things are still going to load back very quickly, good reception strength, and competitive with other models I've seen in this price range. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.